So we were looking at different types of cells, and I just wanted to kind of point out what these cells look like. So we were looking at this on the front board, and we had people come up and try to identify what a cell was. So a lot of people were pointing out these things right here, or the little black dots. Actually, what the cell is this pear-shaped object right here. That's one bone cell. Another bone cell is like right about here. So I'm kind of looking for these like circular patterns. So this is part of the cell. Here's another one over here. So that's the inside part of the cell. And then there's kind of like an oval you can kind of see around that whole thing. There's another one kind of down here. It's hard to tell where the boundaries are, but you can start seeing that there's like a pattern. And the way we described this was it's kind of like looking for a rubber stamp. So this is my pattern, and I just rubber stamp these. There's another one, there's one, there's one, there's one. And so we're looking for the pattern that repeats. Once you find the pattern that repeats, you know you're looking at one of the cells. If we look at a muscle cell, we're looking for a repeating pattern, and kids were pointing out that this kind of was the muscle cell. So it's kind of like a long, stringy thing. And if we took that and made a rubber stamp out of it, and we kept stamping it, we'd see another one here, another one up here. So we have a lot of these long, stringy things that are the muscle cells. Finally, we look at skin cells. So we go down here to our skin cells. We go on medium power. And you can see like these little fish scales. So each one of those is a skin cell. So again, we could take this little part here, make a rubber stamp, and then just keep stamping it all over a page, and we would build up this, what they call a tissue. So lots of cells of the same type working together is called a tissue. So this would be skin tissue, because it's skin cells working together. This would be bone tissue, because it's bone cells working together. And this would be known as skin tissue because it's muscle, or sorry, I don't know if I said that wrong. This would be muscle tissue because we have muscle cells working together. So we just wanted to kind of point out what a cell looks like. A lot of people had a little confusion about that. So now what we want to try to do is figure out, like, how does the body heal? So we wanted to look at a video. So we'll take a look there. So these are skin cells, and you see these white things pop up. So let's watch them for a couple seconds here. They kind of pop up and then disappear. And you notice that the number of cells here is getting greater. So what I'm going to do is we're going to watch it again, except I'm going to slow it down a little bit so we can actually see what's happening. So I'm going to go about half speed. And let's kind of look at those white areas again and see what's going on. So we see a white area pop up, and it looks like it kind of turns from one big white thing, and it kind of splits. If you look very carefully, then when there was one cell, there's actually two now. So when this thing splits, it's actually forming two cells. So it's still kind of hard to see what's happening here. So we're going to take a look at not another video. So we're not going to take a look at another video. We're going to look at these pictures. So this is an onion root. So you take the root of an onion, and we look at slides of that. And we see this image. So there's a cell. So it's got this blue thing in the middle, and there's one of our cells. And what we see happening is this, the center part kind of starts breaking down, kind of forms a line in the center, starts pulling apart, like that was the line in the center. It starts pulling apart to either side, and those strands kind of group back into like these bluish objects here, and you can see there's another cell line forming between them. And then finally we have back to our blue dots. So where there was one cell before, we now have two cells. Okay. This also happens in animal cells. So let's take a look at that. So these are cells from a whitefish. And there's more slides. They just broke it up a little bit more. So we start off again. We've got one cell. So here's the outline of it. And we still have this thing on the inside. And we see it kind of breaking down again, kind of going from something very obvious to something that's kind of just breaking down into pieces. It kind of goes towards the center, forms a line, starts pulling apart, pulls apart a little bit more, even more. Those two strands that pulled apart are starting to kind of group back together again. They kind of turn into those bluish blobs again. And then we see those two things in the center, but now we have two of them. And again, a line between them. So again, we've taken one fish cell and doubled it into another fish cell. So how does this work with our model about what's happening with healing? So I'm going to switch over to the camera so you can draw a little bit. And we had some skin cells on the outside because this is skin. So we've got skin cells all around this area that's wounded. And we just saw that cells would divide and multiply. So this cell is going to split into another one. This one here is going to split into another one, that one. So all these will split into new cells. And eventually those will form new cells. And those will form new cells. And I think you can kind of see what's happening here. We're starting to fill in the wound, right? So it's healing. And this just takes a while. So it might take a couple days for this to get filled in. And, you know, the bigger the wound, the longer it's going to take, which totally makes sense. If you've ever scraped yourself really bad, it takes longer to heal than it does just like a simple paper cut. And one other thing I want to point out is when we looked at those images where we had like, on the onion cell, we had kind of like a box with a thing in the center and it was kind of shaded in, okay? We're going to give some names to some things here. So this whole thing is a cell. This outside part is what we call a cell membrane. It's kind of like the boundary of the cell. This thing on the inside is called a nucleus. The stuff that's inside of the cell, that's not part of the nucleus and it's not outside the cell membrane, is called cytoplasm. Okay. And then when we saw the onion cell kind of like had those strands on both sides when it kind of broke down, these were chromosomes. And you might know, like, what's in chromosomes is what we know as DNA. Okay, so that's what we're seeing on those images. So the blob that's in the center on the onion cell and also the fish cell is the nucleus. That's where the DNA would be. The whole thing is a cell. When it breaks down and the nucleus breaks down, we just have these strands. That's the DNA or the chromosomes. The cell membrane is the outside boundary. And then anything that's in the inside is called cytoplasm. So today we kind of figured out how we get a cut or a wound to start filling in. You notice that when we watched the video, not every cell was just replicating itself. It kind of happened at random, so it doesn't mean like this one's going to go, then that one, then that one. It might be this one, and this one, and that one, and that one. So there is no really rhyme or reason to how they filled it in, but we just know that each cell will at some point divide and start filling in a wound like that. And that was today's lesson.